Thank you, Maria. That was a very lawyerly thing for you to do. Yeah, I am on board with us moving forward, especially because Maria was supposed to be in the last one as well, and I want to be respectful of her time as well, because she's my friend and she'll kick my butt if I waste too much of her time.
Definitely won't do that.
Commissioner Herkman, do you want to kick it off and introduce these two speakers?
Absolutely. Well, so I just know the one. I know Maria, and just so that y'all know, I kind of double booked. I am at just a block away from the George Floyd Memorial, and gonna be doing. I'm meeting. Are you there as well, Ashley? Yeah,
Yeah, and I was on mute. How embarrassing. Yeah, we're at Phelps Park. If you want to swing by, we're just at a picnic table.
Great. I'll come find you. We've got all of our crazies, all 5 of us. But so Maria is kindly giving her time. Maria has helped to found Just Deeds, which is, I'm going to let her explain, but has to do with housing covenants and working with various municipalities in the different cities in the Twin Cities suburbs. And because of things that we have talked about, and I thought this was a great opportunity to get an introduction to the work that she's doing, how they're currently partnering with the city, and then also maybe how we as the Civil Rights Commission could better get the word out and partner with her. So is that a good introduction, Maria? Do you want to just share a little bit about what you've been a part of?
Yeah, that's a great introduction. And I asked Amy to join me because Amy works with the Minneapolis City Attorney's Office, and Amy is the one who helped get Minneapolis on board with Just Deeds. So she can talk more specifically about the city of Minneapolis's involvement. Amy and I also have a little presentation that we put together. We don't have to do the whole presentation depending on how much you all know about this already, but a lot of this is really Minneapolis focused because one huge benefit that you all have over all of the other participating cities is that Minneapolis has hordes of data to talk about what are the problems and how are we going to solve them. So I think, if you want, Amy, we could just jump into this presentation, and because there aren't a lot of us here, maybe it makes sense to just interrupt us when you have questions and we can be a little bit more conversational than we normally are. Is that okay with everyone? I need to figure out then how to share my screen. Tutorial.
So in the upper right-hand corner, right next to the leave button, there's a little rectangle with an arrow pointing up.
Let's see. So I don't have Teams downloaded. I am on a browser. Does that matter?
Somewhere on your browser, there should be a little rectangle with an arrow pointing up.
Oh, screen share. I have it. Hold on, let me try to do something. I'm just going to click buttons. Tell me if it works. I think I figured it out.
Got it.
All right, so it's sharing now?
Yep.
All right, so here's our little presentation here. So Just Deeds. Why is this not advancing? Here we go. So Just Deeds is, we're not a nonprofit. We're not handling any money. We're not really even anything super formally organized. We're a coalition. We are just a bunch of people who were like, this is ridiculous. We need to work together to try to figure out how we're working on systemic racism in housing. And me being a city employee, that when I think about housing, that bleeds into a lot of other things in my work. But we're focusing on housing as kind of the entry point. So I'm the city attorney in Golden Valley, and I live in Golden Valley. I've lived in Minneapolis and Robbinsdale, kind of inner ring and core city my whole life. I'm also on the board of the Minnesota Association of City Attorneys, and we're getting feedback. So last summer, in late 2019, I went to the Golden Valley Human Rights Commission as a resident in Golden Valley and told them about a new law to discharge racially restrictive covenants. And we'll get more into the background of racially restrictive covenants in a minute. But we decided with the Human Rights Commission that we would start a project where I was like, I'll just recruit some of my attorney friends and we will give free legal services to residents of Golden Valley to go through this short process to discharge these covenants. It's not very hard, but it is difficult to have if you don't have access to certain systems, which lawyers have access to. So we decided we would do that. And as we'll talk more about, discharging the covenant doesn't erase it from the property record, but it kind of adds a statement to the record about the covenant and rejecting the covenant. And we also realized the more we talk to people about this, that talking about restrictive covenants and helping people go through an action to discharge them is a very good learning opportunity for people to start understanding what is systemic racism and what does it look like in a concrete system that government put in place and that a lot of private industry has participated in. So that's kind of the goal. The goal is to have the discharge process be an educational experience and an engagement opportunity. And that's why it's important to do it as a coalition, to involve the community, to involve the government, and to involve private companies. So that's what we're doing. And you can see on the screen there, the founding members are the Minnesota Association of City Attorneys, Minneapolis Area Realtors, Mapping Prejudice, which is part of the Borchert Library System at the University of Minnesota. And they're the ones who mapped all of the covenants in Hennepin County. They went through all of the deeds with volunteer help and found all of the restrictive covenants in Hennepin County and gave us that map. And then the City of Golden Valley and Edina Realty Title. And right now we have 11 participating cities. We have a couple more that are coming on soon, and Mapping Prejudice is about to publish their map of Ramsey County. And so then we'll start expanding into Ramsey County. We also have members from private industry. We have a whole arm of our group that is realtors. And we've been, for example, the Department of Commerce has asked us to help put together some education classes. It's going to be a required component of realtor licensing for realtors to learn about mapping prejudice and just deeds. So we're working on things in a lot of projects in a lot of different industries. I tend to focus most of my time on how we're engaging with cities and with community through cities. But there's a lot of opportunity to kind of engage across industries. So here's just a kind of I already kind of told you all this, just a kind of a summary of our mission. If you go to our webpage, justdeeds.org, you can read all about the mission, and there's a whole bunch of educational resources. The City of Minneapolis also has a webpage about Just Deeds and the city's involvement. And again, Minneapolis has got a lot of really Minneapolis-specific information, which is really great to check out. But I think kind of the bottom line I want you to take away from the mission is when I was talking about this really last summer with the City Attorneys Association, we came to the conclusion that there's a lack of honest acknowledgement about a lot of systemic racism, not just in housing, but across all parts of government and private industry. And so there's no fee for anyone to be involved in Just Deeds. You're not required to do anything specific, but everyone is required to really be honest about what is the role that our industries or our organization are playing in this problem, and historically, what have we done? Then we have to commit some resources to take action. So like Minneapolis has committed Amy's time, the city attorney's office, and they have a team of people in the city attorney's office who are volunteering and helping homeowners individually discharge these covenants. And I hope, in Golden Valley, we've been also doing a lot of community engagement. I hope that other cities will also do more of that. And that, the realtors that we have and as part of our coalition will actually do things differently. We're talking to appraisers. Can we do appraisals differently? Can we talk about zoning laws differently? So it's pretty wide open, but you have to be honest. You have to really admit your wrongdoing, and you have to dedicate some resources to do something differently, to actually take action. So here is an example of a discriminatory covenant. This is actually the covenant on my house in Golden Valley, which this was kind of, so I discovered this covenant just being a nerd and reading my title documents when we bought our house about 5 years ago. And my husband is mixed race Latino. My kids are Latino. So it was, and I grew up in this area and I'm white. And so I came to this realization like, holy crap, my family would not have been able to live here, even though my dad grew up a mile away. Like, so what would that have meant for my kids? And how all of the different kinds of benefits that my dad had, and by extension I had growing up in this area, none of that would have been available to my kids. It was not available to people. So, and based solely on race. And then when I found Mapping Prejudice, I realized like, okay, so this would have been a terrible thing for my individual family. And for the families that it affected individually. But even more than that, this was a system that was purposely put in place, and government participated, and realtors participated, and developers participated, and individual property owners participated. So it was this really widespread thing that we don't really talk about. And why don't we talk about it? And if we do start talking about it, what kind of change will it lead to? I think about this a lot in terms of how people approach planning and zoning, because I hear a lot of the things that are highlighted in the research around restrictive covenants. The same kinds of themes appear when people give either elected officials or the members of the public comments on proposed policies in that realm. It's a lot of the same kinds of arguments that historians like our friends at Mapping Prejudice show. Those arguments are all very much related to this practice of racially restrictive covenants. They're things that were in the FHA underwriting manual at the time that these practices were happening. So
Maria, sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Can you go back and can you read it out loud? Just so I mean, we have it on the record, because it's just so shocking, and I just believe in the power of words. Also,
Sure.
can you email this
PowerPoint.
Thank you, PowerPoint to us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's been a long.
Okay.
Yeah, so this covenant, and again, this is just one example. The language is different and you'll see over time the way that people talked about race and our understandings or our made up categories of race changed over time. And but anyway, this one is kind of a later one, and it says no persons of any race other
You broke up. We lost your audio.
Yep. Can you hear us, Maria?
Oh, I can't. I went out and came back. Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're back.
Okay. Okay, I'll go back to the beginning. So it says no persons of any race other than the Caucasian race shall use or occupy any building or any lot, except that this covenant shall not prevent occupancy by domestic servants of a different race domiciled with an owner or tenant. So yeah, that's pretty gross. I actually attended a presentation where there were I was in a group from Plymouth and Wayzata, and a woman who has a house in Wayzata shared that she had a similar covenant on her house, and that when she saw it, what it reminded her of was that in her kitchen, she has a back stairway that leads directly from the kitchen to a third floor servants' quarters. And so the covenant was it was physically built into her house. So yeah, this is a pretty common wording. If you go to Mapping Prejudice's website or the Just Deeds website, there's an interactive map, and you can click on individual properties and read the covenants for each property. I don't know if I should show the video because you guys are all on small screens. Maybe I'll just email you a link to the video. I don't know if you've seen Jim Crow of the North. It's a 7-minute version of Jim Crow of the North, but Jim Crow of the North is a TPT video about mapping prejudice, highlighting their work, and it's about an hour long. I will send you a link to the short one and the long one because I think they're both very much worth watching. Let's see. Let me try to toggle my screens here, get rid of all these contracts I'm reviewing. I don't know if you can see all my work stuff open. I was going to show you.
Maria, I don't think your screen is sharing when you popped out. At least for me, I can't see your screen anymore.
Yeah, it's no longer.
Which is fine. Which is fine. If you want to send us the PowerPoint and keep going, you're very engaging and easy to follow.
All right. Well, I'm going to actually still try to share it. I'm going to try to reshare. But I'm not going to toggle around like I was. So, Amy, maybe you want to take over at this point, or should I just keep going and you can talk when we get to the exciting parts? Hold on. I'm about to share.
Yeah, if you're working on that. Oh, there you go. Okay. Well, so as you can see on the screen, beginning in the 1940s and moving throughout the late 1960s, in both state and federal government, in both the legislature and the judicial branch, racial covenants were made illegal step by step at every level. So that by late 1968, they had been outlawed at state level, federal level, by courts, by law. You were not allowed to make new racial covenants. You were not allowed to enforce racial covenants. You weren't allowed to discriminate in housing. They had piecemeal chipped away at the ability to create and enforce racial covenants. However, as you can see, it wasn't until 2019 that the Minnesota legislature passed this law allowing property owners to reject racially restrictive covenants. And I think it's really important to note that difference in timing between 1968 and 2019. And it's especially important to note that in 1968, or leading up to 1968, when various branches of government made these covenants illegal, it wasn't that the people were having a change of heart and deciding that the covenants were wrong for themselves. It was the government telling them they couldn't do it anymore. And so by 1968, when covenants had become completely illegal, we as a community didn't really do anything with them. We stopped enforcing them because we as a community had to stop enforcing them, but there was no effort to redress the negative impacts of racial covenants or really confront what occurred and what continues to occur because of them. And I think that that is going to be really evident in the next slides that Maria is going to show you about the impacts of housing discrimination like racial covenants and the continuing impacts that those discriminatory actions have even after they are no longer legal.
So here's one, and this is not going to be a surprising slide to anybody. It shows Minnesota's homeownership gap, and it basically confirms what we have. I mean, we even hear the governor talking about this now, that we have the worst homeownership gap in the country. And so the blue line on the bottom, if for those of you on small screens, is BIPOC homeownership. The pink line in the middle is all of Minnesotans, and the white line is white non-Hispanic. So white non-Hispanic homeownership is up around 75, 80%. BIPOC homeownership is around closer to the 45% mark. So it's horrendous.
And when you start to break out a little bit further into different categories of race by home ownership, you see even further the correlation in those disparities as I don't remember if we pointed out that racial covenants, while they, the language varied by racial covenants, and they impacted many different racial minorities within Minnesota. Predominantly, they were aimed at Black folks. And you can see that, the impacts of that in this homeownership gap in Minnesota. So right now it's listed by all people of color being categorized together. But if you break that down further, Black residents in Minnesota have the lowest homeownership rate out of any of the people of color category in Minnesota at just 25%. And then it goes up to Indigenous homeownership at 49%, Hispanic homeownership at 50%, Asian homeownership at 60%, and then non-Hispanic white homeownership at 77%. So in line with what you see with who was targeted in these racial covenants and similar housing discrimination efforts, you see the disparate impact in who is impacted by them continue.
Yeah, so let's, the next slide will show some more impacts. So the covenants divided the community by race, and the covenants went hand in hand with another practice that the federal government used that called redlining. And redlining was part of the federal government's lending practices. So basically the federal government said, we're not going to give a mortgage in an area where Black people live. We will only give mortgages if they are not mixed race and if it's a white neighborhood. And so we think that the best practices are for developers to put racially restrictive covenants on these neighborhoods, and then that will make our lending less risky because we'll know that we're only lending to white people in neighborhoods with only white people. And the idea behind this, I mean, this is this is something that is, to me, is still connected to how we do zoning and property development today, because what really was happening there is that people were selling exclusivity. Cities and the federal government were creating exclusive communities where only white people could live. And then private actors were benefiting, they were profiting off of that. Because if a house was in a racially restricted neighborhood, you could sell it for more, and there was money available in the form of a mortgage backed by the federal government to buy those properties. So there's a lot of money being made off of this. And when I think about planning and zoning decisions today, I think about, is what we're doing perpetuating this idea that exclusivity is desirable and creates profit? And if so, we probably shouldn't be doing that, because it perpetuates the segregated housing patterns that were created by racially restrictive covenants. And so what you're seeing on this map here is demographics in the city of Minneapolis, and this looks like it's from 2015. And you can see, so the green areas are the most diverse areas. The yellow areas are, I guess, average. I'm not really sure what that means. But the red areas are the least diverse areas. I also have to say, whoever made this map, I love that they did the red as the least diverse and the green as the most diverse. That's a great touch. But if you overlay this map with the racially restrictive covenants map, you'll see that these patterns were created by racially restrictive covenants. So the red areas are the areas that had racially restrictive covenants. And even though they've been illegal in Minnesota since 1953, that's still how we're living. And a lot of that has to do with value and accumulation of generational wealth, which is, I think, in a couple of these next slides, that we have now made the red areas so exclusive that you can't afford to live in them unless you have access to generational wealth, which you would not if you were targeted by racially restrictive covenants in the past.
Yeah, so with respect to Minneapolis specifically, although Minneapolis's population is comprised of 69% white residents and 19% Black residents as of the last census, I believe, many of the neighborhoods that had large numbers of racial covenants in Minneapolis still have a population of about 73 to 90% white residents. And many of the neighborhoods that were redlined, those neighborhoods that people of color were forced to move into because of the covenants, still have populations of 43 to 62% Black residents, which is much higher, as you can tell, than the average Minneapolis population. Additionally, and I think most related to racial covenants, there was a study done in 2019 that found that houses in Minneapolis, which previously had racial covenants, had an average of 4 to 15% higher present day home values than homes that never had racial covenants. So there you can see the present day impact of racial covenants that haven't been legal for 60 plus years.
Yeah, which gets to a lot of other practices like appraisals, because there's a reason that, you know, Paul, we live super close by and our houses are probably similar sizes. Your house is nicer than mine for sure. And our values probably don't reflect.
Maria, you cut out again.
Oh, let me try. Sorry, I probably have like 10 teenagers on my Wi-Fi right now. Anyway, this all impacts values, which impacts people's ability to generate wealth going forward, which is a problem. Okay, so this slide, this is kind of a new idea, but I love this slide and I love this report that this came from. This came from a report from the Met Council called Rethinking Areas of Concentrated Poverty. What you're seeing in that map, which is probably pretty small for all of you, the pink areas are areas of concentrated poverty, according to the Met Council. And the yellow areas are areas of concentrations of affluence. And so the Met Council has decided they're going to start studying these two concepts differently, because we tend to focus on areas of concentrated poverty, and then we create this dialogue around that, like, well, these people and these problems, these are problem areas, these are problem people living in these problem areas. And what we really need to be acknowledging through talking about this history is, no, these areas were created like this on purpose by government and private industry, and that the decisions were made and continue to be made about where to invest resources and where to underinvest in what areas. And so we can't have, and the Met Council also did a series of listening sessions where they talked about, or they heard from community how damaging it is to have the conversation use words that diminish and narratives that diminish people living in areas of concentration of poverty that we purposely created. And so we need to change how we talk about it. And one way to do that is to acknowledge the history. So I'll send you a link to that report too. It's a really great report. It's just kind of talking about how they're going to change how they study these things. But the other thing to think about, and I really love having conversations between Golden Valley and Minneapolis on this topic, because you can see kind of like right in the middle there, there's a big, you can see where North Minneapolis is, and then there's, you know, a southern part of Golden Valley and a northern part of St. Louis Park and part of Minneapolis where there's a concentration of affluence. It all kind of converges around Theodore Wirth Park. And we need to acknowledge that that's purposeful and that we have to be talking across city borders to resolve these issues, because the history here is, as terrible as it is to acknowledge as a staff member at Golden Valley and a resident there, that there was an overinvestment in Golden Valley at the expense of North Minneapolis. And so we have to start talking about that and figure out how we're going to work together across lines to acknowledge that and to fix it. So then you have,
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
We just had a question.
Sure.
Just to clarify, I think what you were saying is that because of these covenants and the way that the city was designed by our government, that they over-invested in certain areas and under-invested in some. So they weren't necessarily taking money away from North Minneapolis. They were just under-investing in it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but that's a good summary of how I look at it. I mean, if you think about, this is probably a pretty controversial thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's a fact. If you think about how we fund schools, for example, with property taxes, and then we create higher values by creating exclusivity, that is by design going to end up with a system where Golden Valley residents who pay higher property taxes and have higher values, however those values were created, are going to have access to more well-funded schools. And that's part of the design that we're talking about. And the same is true for all sorts of infrastructure, for access to green space, decisions about where landfills and refuse centers are placed, how wide are the streets, and what are the parking rules, and what kinds of buildings are we building, and all sorts of things kind of radiate out of what was the plan for how this area was going to be developed. I'm sure I'm missing things. We can throw things in as we go here. There's another slide about health impacts. So let me go to that slide.
One additional kind of question, I guess, comment, note on just what you said about like the specific, like investing in specific areas. I'm assuming there's also like a correlation too with like single family housing versus like multi-units and rentals, and how that all correlates to the disparities as well. Yeah, that's exactly right. I think about a lot size too, in terms of density, deciding, and then transportation also relates to that. So like, where are we deciding to put our transportation, and then who has access to it, and where do they have access to go? How convenient is the mode of transportation that we put in these different places? Transportation also is another one that can be used as a barrier. If you decide not to put a lot of bus lines between Golden Valley and North Minneapolis, that's going to impact the flow of people and who has access to all of the opportunities that have been built in North Minneapolis or in Golden Valley or in South Minneapolis. So like, if we have job centers in Golden Valley, and we choose not to have transportation to connect people living in North Minneapolis with a job center in Golden Valley, that's going to impact who has those jobs. And that's true. So on the slide in front of you, you can see it also, that's true for health impacts. So there's a lot of research about the fact that your zip code is the best indicator for your life expectancy, and all sorts of other things like incidence of asthma and obesity and diabetes. And they can tie this back to land use decisions. So if you're in an area that has more pavement, it's hotter. And that is true in parts of Minneapolis. It can be 5 degrees warmer in parts of Minneapolis than it is in my house 2 miles away in Golden Valley. And that's all because of how much pavement and how much green space there is, and how many trees, like tree cover. So those are all decisions that were made. The same with being, food deserts. How close are you to a grocery store where you can get healthy food? And then,
how close are you to industrial pollution in the air that might cause asthma? Yeah.
And I think one of my coworkers, Kiara Zachary, she's our equity and inclusion manager in Golden Valley. She lives in North Minneapolis, so we've been doing a lot of looking at North Minneapolis versus Golden Valley. There's like a waste transfer station right near her house, kind of by the river. All of those things, it's not a coincidence that all of those things are where they are. I think we've previously talked about these things as though they were a coincidence, but they're not. Because these decisions, we have records of all of these decisions. So like in Golden Valley, we have Planning Commission and City Council minutes approving developments with racially restrictive covenants in the minutes. So these things were not, somebody has made a decision about all of these things, which is why we need to be paying attention, because we do continue to make decisions that have these same outcomes and impacts. So this slide talks more about just the accumulation of wealth factor and how important it is that people have access to home ownership to be able to accumulate generational wealth. If you watch that Jim Crow of the North, you'll see that Kirsten Delegard, one of the founders of Mapping Prejudice, talks about how she owns a home in South Minneapolis, and her grandparents were Swedish immigrants, and they bought a home in South Minneapolis. And then when they died, part of her inheritance she used to buy her house, and that she wouldn't have been able to afford her house if it hadn't been for that help from her grandparents, from her inheritance from them. And so if you are not from a family that has had the opportunity over time to accumulate wealth, then you won't have that same opportunity that she had to buy in these neighborhoods. And so this map here just shows home appreciation by zip code across the city. And again, if you line this up with a racially restrictive covenant map, you'll see just what Amy said before. If a house had a racially restrictive covenant on it, it's more likely that it's accumulated more, or it's appreciated more over time. And so that wealth has then been transferred to those families that had the opportunity to own that property. It's also worth saying that even though, so like you saw there was a ring of racially restrictive covenants kind of around exactly where you would expect. But even though, so like the suburbs had this ring of covenants along the Minneapolis border, the city of Golden Valley doesn't have covenants on every single house. So if you move west from the border with Minneapolis, you see less and less covenants. You do see them pop up in the most desirable places to live, like near parks and around the golf club. The Golden Valley Country Club had covenants around it, near Medicine Lake. But the whole city isn't blanketed. Nevertheless, Golden Valley is an 87% white community now, and was designed to be that way because the covenants, having just a wall of covenants is enough to stop people from moving beyond those covenants. And that was a pattern that you see across the United States. So Amy, do you want to do this slide?
Yeah, so we've been talking a lot about racial covenants and the impacts of racial covenants, obviously, because that's what the project is centered around. But I think it's important to also place those covenants within a larger context of housing discrimination that existed at the time and that continues to exist to this day. So we talked a little bit about interplay between racial covenants and redlining, but the system of housing discrimination really goes back as far as white people have existed in Minnesota. And so you can look really from the start of colonization of Minnesota by white settlers and the exploitation of tribal land through today to continue to find, like we discussed with racial covenants, right? It was the government telling people they couldn't do it, not people having a change of heart. So it shouldn't surprise us then to learn that when racial covenants became outlawed, discrimination didn't go away. It just morphed into something new. And so we just need to look and find what that next type of housing discrimination was that replaced racial covenants. And so another important piece of this project for me is educating community members on that larger system of housing inequality and the myriad of different types of housing inequality that exist and continue to exist. And so there's some on your screen here. You can see on the left side of the screen, that is the redlining map that we discussed. And so named literally, the redlined areas were the areas that were designated by the banks as being like literally called hazardous areas, areas that they wouldn't give federally backed mortgages in. And those were, most definitely areas that that people of color lived in. There might be other reasons to not give mortgages in an area, but they most certainly were not going to give mortgages in an area with a high concentration of people of color living there. So you can see like the literal redlining on that map. And then on the right side of the screen, I believe that is the map that relates to, is that the highway map?
Yeah, that's the highway map. Yeah, so there's another TPT show about the Rondo neighborhood in St. Paul that you should also check out. But that map is just pointing out that the design of our highway system in the metro area is related to redlining and the use of racially restrictive covenants, because if you line up that highway map with the most diverse neighborhoods, you'll see that the highways run through what are the most diverse neighborhoods in our community. And that also, again, were purposeful decisions, because when you are carving out a giant highway from a neighborhood, you have to use condemnation, and you have to take out properties. And so they just thought, well, this will be the best. We'll just destroy all of the BIPOC neighborhoods, and then it won't affect the white people. So that's what happened. And if you watch that Rondo TPT show, you'll see that. And so, we have to think about how are we making sure we're not doing stuff like that today? Because, if you pay attention to how government works, that we have a lot of processes where there's required public hearings. And I think it's well-intentioned to have a public hearing and have elected officials hear from the public before they make a decision. But a lot of times, whoever's the most organized and whoever has the most people and whoever speaks the language of the deciders, they have a large amount of influence on what the decision is. And so that has not worked in the advantage of diverse communities over the years in our community. So
yeah, and I think if we go to the next slide, I think this is just the perfect example of that. Because as we discussed, racial covenants in the late 1960s, the government told people they were no longer allowed to enforce them. And that's really around the time when modern zoning, you saw that start to really pick up and be adopted whole scale by cities big and small. And if you look in the language that you see in front of you, you're not going to see a restriction that labels no Black people or labels people based on race, but effectively.
This one actually, this one actually does.
Oh, does it? Oh,
Yeah,
this is the one. Covenant. Yeah.
This is the one from Golden Valley, actually. So letter G says that the premises conveyed shall not at any time be sold, mortgaged, or leased to any person or persons of Chinese, Japanese, Moorish, Mongolian, or African blood or descent. But this again is from City Council minutes. This is horrifying, and it's from the same year as Amy was saying that the City of Golden Valley adopted its first zoning code. And so when I was looking at these minutes, I was like, okay, so we required this racially restrictive covenant in this approval. What else did we require in this approval? So we required a particular style of architecture. We required a certain cost. It had to be at least a $7,500 house. We required single family dwellings. So it occurred to me when these covenants started to become illegal, cities were like, okay, we won't do the covenants, but we know there are all of these other things that we do in conjunction with covenants that also reinforce the system. So we're just going to take all those things and make those into laws. And they'll have to do that. And so we'll be able to perpetuate the system without actually having to use the explicitly racist language. Which is why Minneapolis's 2040 plan and the hugely controversial idea of not having single family zoning is really a bold step in the right direction.
Yeah, so thanks for mentioning that, because that is another thing that I talk to people a lot about in this project is it's good to know the background information, right? But what do we do with this background information today? And one of the things that I tell people is, now that we know that discriminatory housing is so pervasive, it's not just racial covenants. There are so many different types of discriminatory housing practices. They continue to exist. They continue to morph. That when you go out there and you hear about a new initiative related to housing, your first question, no matter what it is and no matter what it talks about, your first question to yourself should really be, what is the type of discrimination that exists related to this subject? Because you will find some. There's so much housing discrimination that whatever new program or initiative you're hearing about, it's going to have some relation to some kind of discriminatory practices. And then your next question should be, does this initiative make those that discrimination worse, or does it make it better? And so a little self-serving, but one of the examples I use because everybody's heard of it is Minneapolis 2040. And specifically the elimination of single family zoning. So I don't know, there was a lot of conversations around elimination of single family zoning. I wasn't privy to all of them, but I do think that it may have been lost on some people that the elimination of single family zoning was an act that can remediate some of the discriminatory housing practices that occurred. I don't think that connection was necessarily made for everyone. And I think if people start to examine everyday housing practices or everyday housing policies to see what the connection to discrimination is and to see whether it can eliminate some of those discrimination harms that are being experienced, that we'll start to see more engagement in those types of initiatives and more support for them. So that's my hope, is that people will start to ask themselves those questions critically when they hear about new things.
Amy and Maria, just a question kind of going off of that, then as we kind of talked about, there's a lot of different connections to discriminatory practices in housing that affect a lot of other aspects of life, and one of them including being like schools, I think was brought up. And so has there been any work that your team has done, or just any connections that have been made with, I know there was that kind of redistricting plan that was approved last year, and so just wondering your thoughts on like the connection with that and how to view that piece of policy through this lens.
So we have not connected with the school districts other than talking about how do we educate through the school districts channels. And so, or for instance, the Just Eats Coalition is, we've participated in like the I don't know what I can't remember what they're called, but like the ECFE of Robbinsdale school districts of like for parental learning. But we do need to start having more conversations with school districts. The tricky part about that is that, so technically under Minnesota law, a school district is its own municipality. So they're basically the same as a city. They're their own city. They have different powers and they do different things, but they have their own taxing authority, and they make their own rules, and they have their own set of rules that they have to follow. That's some are the same, but a lot of them are different than what cities have to follow. And so I think it's a little bit more complicated question about how we engage school districts. I do think though that there's a lot of, so it's really important what the narrative is. And it's also really important who is asking who for what. You know, we tend to, a lot of things are happening in bubbles because we have these borders. And we know that there are students that live in Minneapolis, for example, that open enroll into Hopkins Public Schools and go to Meadowbrook because it's, you know, like a mile across the border. We know that that's happening. We have to be talking to, and going the other way too. You know, there's a lot of, there are people who live in the suburbs and drive into the city to go to different schools. So we have to be thinking more across those lines and not allowing ourselves, I think, to be in these bubbles so much. Because one way that this system has been perpetuated is by having all these separate buckets and not allowing people to hold each other accountable in the different buckets that exist. Because it's really easy to get lost in the system if you're trying to right one of these big, big wrongs. I don't know, Amy, if you have any other ideas.
I don't, but I see Ashley has her hand up.
Commissioner Devenish. Here, use the microphone.
I'm sorry. How can the Civil Rights Commission help? And do you have a list of BIPOC-friendly lenders?
Great question.
So I'm going to see, here's my slide about what we can do. And human rights commissions can do even more. Maybe I'll let Amy specifically talk about that since she's a city employee. But we are in the process of engaging the mortgage community. And I think that idea of making a list of BIPOC-friendly lenders, and because there are so before I was a lawyer, I did mortgages. I had worked at this little shop on Lake Street and worked with the Latino community and a lot of newly arrived immigrants. So there are a lot of very specific changes that need to happen, industry changes in real estate and in lending, mortgage lending, to support all of the things that the change that we're talking about. So yes, that is part of the coalition. And if you would like to be, the commission would like to be involved in discussions about that, I think one thing that we could do is the coalition could be a sort of a conduit for community members to connect with industry leaders at a larger scale. So not just one lending company at a time, but maybe talk through our connections with the Department of Commerce and that regulates that industry, and make connections with leaders in that industry to really have them hear, these are the barriers that people are experiencing, and this is how we think that they should be fixed. So that's a really great idea. Amy, do you want to talk more specifically about maybe the city of Minneapolis?
Yeah, so within the city of Minneapolis, we're operating our Just Deeds project internally. And what we are doing at this stage is we've put out citywide advertisements to people offering our services. We have a website available and an online application. People can apply to have assistance of the staff in the city attorney's office in removing the racial covenants from their property. So all of our work, we don't charge for the work in preparing those documents or recording those documents, and Hennepin County has waived all the fees associated with recording legal covenants and with looking up documents for related to this project. So it is free of charge to applicants who qualify for the project. And basically what we do is just do a little bit of education, like we just discussed with you, about the history of racial covenants, other discriminatory housing practices, how that lines up with modern practices and initiatives, and then what community resources or community initiatives are available for people to take part in, and then assist folks with discharging those racial covenants on their properties. So you can see our website is available up on the slide there at minneapolismn.gov/justdeeds at this point. We are just accepting applications through the website. We had an overwhelming response to our citywide rollout, and so we're looking to get those applications underway, and then we will move to doing more directed conversations with various neighborhood groups, both neighborhood groups in neighborhoods that had large amounts of racial covenants targeted at discharge of those covenants and education of the community, and neighborhood groups in neighborhoods that were redlined, that have populations of individuals who were not able to purchase homes because of the racial covenants. And those conversations will target more about the types of government initiatives, city initiatives that are available for folks related to housing.
This is Commissioner Devenish. I have another question. I'm sorry. You talked about the economic gap and the wealth that's passed down, and obviously credit is entangled with that, and Minnesota is big on that. In fact, I've had problems with that coming to Minnesota, where you have to have good credit, and good credit means like a credit score of 620. You have to make 3 times the rent. You have to have a deposit first month, last month, and current rent. So it's so many asks that Minnesota has that I personally had a hard time with. And so with that, my ask is, can you create or have support to how to repair your credit? Because I think a lot of us, because of our student loan debt, which is also a problem in our community, I think a lot of us may have used those loans to pay off our bills while we're going to school because of the economic wealth, and made our situation worse. in terms of economics. So I think of credit, that we need help restoring our credit. And also within your organization, if you guys could come up with specific asks, because I think with my experience with the civil rights, and this is just my opinion, commission, is that you have to be very specific. And each ask, has to be basically, in my opinion, voted on, because that's just my personal thoughts. But as a subcommittee, I think we can, meet, at every meeting or however. But when we go to the larger commission, I think we have to fine tune what our ask is. And that's just my thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Miss Commissioner Folk also has her hand up as well.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, maybe as the next step for our subcommittee is we can take this information that was shared today, which was so helpful, and maybe come up with a few ideas of how we can maybe engage and further, specifically from like a community engagement standpoint, knowing that's kind of community engagement education is what our subcommittee is, and just knowing that this is already a project that the city is taking on, but thinking through maybe how we can also partner with your team and help further engagement in the community, as it sounds like the more engagement the better, and the more people doing the outreach the better. So maybe that can just be a next step coming out of this meeting that we can discuss.
Am I muted? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm just like floored by this presentation, and I just want to thank Commissioner Herkman for inviting Miss Maria here, and then Maria reaching out to you, Amy. I really commend the work that you do, and I'm just like, it's a heavy day, but like I'm fueled up. So in any way we can help, educate and engage the community, I'm ready to do that, because it's astounding to me that we have all of the data, we have all of the information, we have one of the largest education gap in the country. We have the largest, what I just learned today, home ownership, and those things are interlinked.
Yeah.
And we can't fix it. Are you kidding? So I'm floored, I'm fueled up, and let us know how we can engage and educate. If you have events, I think we're happy to come out and volunteer and talk to people. Once we get this slideshow that you guys put together so beautifully, I'm happy to read over it and just, go over talking points with folks. I love doing that. But I have a question. As for you two, as lawyers, as coalition members, and also as just human beings, I'm wondering, do you think that there is a way that we can end discrimination altogether in housing, in education, in healthcare, in a capitalistic society? Is it possible? Because people are profiting off of, like you said, they're underinvesting, they're overinvesting, they're private actors that are profiting off of this. And I guess I'm just curious, what your thoughts are on that. And also I want to open it up to any other commissioners who have questions or statements and all that.
So I'll try to answer that question. I think the best we can do is everything we can do, and we have to do everything we can do. And it starts with the community engagement, because like I said, the narratives really matter. It feels sometimes, I'm a person of action, and I'm in a position where I can take action and give advice that causes other people to take action, which is awesome. But those things don't actually gain momentum or make change unless the narratives also change along with that, and the community attitudes change, and people have real commitment to it. And so we have to really focus on this community engagement if we want meaningful action to follow. And the idea with the coalition is that we can't be prescriptive, because sorry about my dogs. There's something very exciting happening at my house. Every community has been impacted by this differently. So it's different how we engage and talk to Golden Valley residents versus Minneapolis residents. And so that's, kind of to the question about what is the ask and what can we all do. I love the idea of you all having a conversation about, well, how can we take this information and start to bring it to our community in a way that's meaningful. And I think you already even pointed out, it's going to be different how you talk about it and what the outcome of those conversations is, depending on what part of your city you're having that discussion in. But I think we need to start that conversation, keep the conversation going, and then what that will lead to is more policy change, which is ultimately, as a city attorney, that's where I am like, that's what I want to be doing. But I can't, the elected officials make those decisions, and the elected officials listen to what the community says. So we all have to have the same base before we can get to that point. And I love talking to Minneapolis because you all are leaders on this. You do a lot of things that other cities don't do. And set an example that other cities follow. Usually we have kind of a joke that I say to Amy, which is, this is a great idea. Let's wait for Minneapolis to do it and get sued, and then we'll find out if we can all do it.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. So I will, I'll leave my personal thoughts on your question aside and say, from a professional perspective, I understand why you framed the question in terms of a capitalist society. I get the nuances of why you asked that specifically, but I think I would agree with Maria to go a step further that, like, even outside of that framework, we've been talking a lot about like culture in a lot of different contexts related to equity and inclusion work. And I think that this is an issue also of culture, of some people's culture, and what they have been internalizing as how the world should work for many, many years. And I think that's above and beyond like any like actual structural system. And so to kind of play off what Maria was saying, I do think that needs to be like a culture shift for some members of the community that's necessary in order for actual change to be lasting. And so I agree that, like, while I'm happy to assist people in the removal of their racial covenants as part of this program, for me, the larger value I see in it is having those community conversations and the potential for a culture shift around these ideas of discriminatory impacts in housing.
Mm-hmm.
So to going off of that, what I know it you briefly overviewed when you were talking about all the different things your committee is working on, but I think I heard one specific thing regarding like outreach with specific neighborhood groups and neighborhoods. I think I used to live in Tingletown, and I believe we had a mapping prejudice meeting like with our racial equity task force. So I think I've seen the presentation and everything, but just wondering how you're thinking about that specifically from an education lens. Like, what materials have you, maybe not materials, but like what kind of tactics have you guys thought through of really educating the community and changing that cultural gap? Because I agree with you. I think if you look at it, there was a lot of systemic things in play, but obviously you had to have people who were the actors, who were the ones that didn't buy houses in specific neighborhoods and didn't want to go to specific neighborhoods because they were quote unquote bad. And so at the end of it, even outside of the systemic structures, there is like a cultural people education lens that's really important to change. So just wondering how you guys are thinking about that specifically.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, so it's happening already in the conversations that I'm having one-on-one with people who have applied. So like I said, as part of the program, I sit down with them when we're working on their documents. And the first part of that meeting is the kind of like the discussion that we just had, right? So it's me in a Zoom call with one or two people who have applied to the program, talking through all the things that you and I just discussed and having a conversation about them. And so it will be a larger scale of that in a neighborhood organization meeting. It's going to vary. I've spoke to our NCR, Neighborhood and Community Relations Department, about this project, and they've really specified that like there's no one size fits all approach to how you talk to community, and so it might be a neighborhood meeting, it might be like a formal community meeting, it might be we're sitting down in a living room with a group of people meeting. It really just depends on what the community that we're talking to, like how that community responds and intakes information and gathers.
Yeah, so, and we have on the Just Deeds webpage, there's a Get Involved tab, and there's a section for community members. We have a bunch of educational resources for people, and then Kiara, my colleague here at the City of Golden Valley, made a toolkit. So it's a neighborhood toolkit, and it just basically is a guide to have people help people go through the process to try to start facilitating community conversations on their own on a one-to-one basis, or if it weren't COVID and I wanted to invite maybe I'll just invite all my vaccinated neighbors over and we can watch Jim Crow of the North on my garage, and then have a glass of wine and have this conversation, and talk about what are we going to do as a neighborhood. We all have these covenants on our houses. We all have this shared history.
That's a great point, because there are, I don't want to say like you have to wait for me, right? There are already neighborhood organizations out there. There are a couple like that have formally organized around racial covenants that are not this project. They're like doing their own thing by themselves, and that's awesome. There are people who have informally organized around it. Some of the applicants that I've talked to have said like, hey, I'm just going to go door knock because I live in one of these neighborhoods where everybody, like literally every house has a covenant. I'm just going to go door knock my neighbors and tell them to sign up. It doesn't have to, we have plans, but it does not have to be through me that these things are accomplished.
Yeah,
yeah, that's super helpful to know like the toolkit and the resources. And I think that's something we can take as a subcommittee as like a next step of like reviewing that and talking as a larger commission on how we want to leverage those. And maybe because I know in the past, I'm relatively new to the commission, but I know last year and in the past we've done things where we've done like community. I know last year it was like digital, but it was like community meetings, education on different types of topics, and we had guest speakers. So there could be a potential thing we hold with you guys, but just knowing there's toolkits and stuff out there that we can even leverage, that's super helpful to know. And I think if you have any additional information, just like you were saying, there's like neighborhood groups that are already kind of forming and doing their own thing, even information like that. I think those are great connections that we should be making as a engagement and education like subcommittee, to make connections with the people who are already doing the work and seeing how we can like foster that partnership and strengthen that.
Yes.
Excuse me. This is Commissioner Devenish. So I hear a lot of the problems, and I think you guys are doing great work, but at the same time, I want to hear solutions. So once again, I talked about one, credit, and finding lenders who are for people of color. I think we need solutions. So I love action. I'm all about action, but action truly cannot occur until there are solutions. We can keep on having this conversation, but part of me is tired of having conversations. Part of me wants to see the action and finding solutions. So unless we can identify, it shouldn't be hard to find lenders who are people of color friendly, or people who can help you restore your credit so you can get the house.
Yeah.
Because, we are, we do have jobs. We are, invested in the community. We just might be missing that little step.
Yeah.
And finding that support to get us into that home ownership.
I'm a real estate agent actually, and I work with a lot of the community, especially minorities, and I work with some great companies that offer all of those programs. A lot of the people that I encounter are just misinformed as to what can help them. I meet with so many people that have no idea where they need to go and who they need to connect with. So I might take them away from the bank that they're connecting with and take them with a broker that's going to help them and offer them a lot more programs, because their banks can't do that for them, unfortunately. They're so restricted. So anybody who I run into that works with actual banks, I refer them to other options, and 90% of the time they find a better option and a better program that helps them out. It's unfortunate, but it's such a great opportunity for me as a real estate agent, because I get to help people invest in themselves, invest in their community, and invest in their families so they can help grow. So, I mean, there's plenty of things out there. I can give plenty of access to that. I work with, like I said, a lot of people that do just that. And which is one of the reasons I switched companies that I did at the beginning of the year, because they were more involved in the community, helping minorities get into things and get into investing in their families and stuff. And that was important for me.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
I do also want to.
I was gonna say, I'd be happy to, help out in any way in that capacity.
And I do also want to point out that the city of Minneapolis does also have home buyer assistance programs for down payment and closing costs for home buyers in certain neighborhoods of the city. It's generally North Minneapolis. So that is also a resource that's available, Minneapolis specific as well.
I'm also taking notes on all of these things, because I'm going to go back to the realtors and other lenders that we've been talking to see if we can create, maybe we can put a part of our webpage dedicated to these things and provide people with resources on the Just Deeds webpage. And I'll also talk to the Department of Commerce and see, because they regulate all of these things, what ideas they have for addressing those problems. And then
I'm sorry.
No.
So definitely look into NARAB, because that's a very big, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they do a lot of different things, and they're not just in Minneapolis. They work in different suburbs and different areas, so that you're not restricted in just Minneapolis, because there's so many, you can piggyback on different opportunities and stuff like that too. So there's so many things out there for people that they're just not aware of or informed of.
Commissioner Davis, will you say that acronym again?
NARAB?
NARAB.
NARAB, yep, NAREB. There's also PPL, which is another program that's really great for, and they do stuff not just in Minneapolis as well. They do a lot of stuff there, especially with the George Floyd and everything that's transpired. There's been a lot of different areas in minority specific, but that want to help specific minority bases, families, things like that, to invest in themselves. So I found some really great programs for a lot of the people that I've worked with to help them get towards their earnest money, or towards their down payment, or towards their closing costs. Because right now the market's been super crazy to even get offers. So you need to have some of this extra stuff. So that's where the unfortunate thing for new home buyers, from my experience, they're the ones that are missing out right now, because they're the ones that need the assistance. But all these people that are selling homes are just looking at the big number, and they could care less about these poor people that are trying to invest and trying to do something, and they're stuck because they cannot, they're not getting, they can't offer cash. They can't offer the different things that all these other people are offering, investors or whomever it might be. People are selling their homes and having all this cash to give up. They're not wanting, inspections. It's all just crazy. And so it's like, I've been pulling in different areas to trying to find for my people, so they can get their offer accepted and be able to look as good as these people that have cash to just buy whatever. It's been really tough, but I've been, thankfully come up with some really great opportunities for them, so they can actually get their offers accepted, because it's been a tough one. So there's definitely some stuff out there, but you got to dig for it, unfortunately.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis, for doing the work and sharing that with us. I was just going to suggest, it sounds like there's two parts to this, right? There's the engagement and education piece, and then there's the solution piece, right? And it seems like Commissioner Davis has some connections, and I'm sure, you know, Maria and Amy can connect with you if they need those resources.
Absolutely.
The other thing I was going to ask is if the coalition would want to be a part of a Juneteenth celebration and have a table that way. And I know some commissioners would be able to be at the table and, you know, engage with the community and even have applications, hard copies. I don't know if you have that.
We're asking for a fee to pay for our porta potties.
Oh, and then there's also a fee because we need to pay for porta potties. True. And so what did you know the fee?
We need $150 from each table.
$150 for a table. And that is on June 19th, Saturday. So that would be something I think would be great to have like a resource sheet for folks who are looking to buy with maybe, you know, credit issues or whatever. And then also a resource sheet for people who want to get that racist racial covenant language off of their deed. Commissioner Vice Chair Folk, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the like community and engagement piece is like intertwined with, I guess, the quote unquote solution piece. I feel like it's just two different audiences that we're trying to talk to. So I would say the piece that is more solution orientated, like Commissioner Devenish said, is probably geared to the community who has been hurt by these racial covenants and who are currently still hurting. And so how can we give them immediate information and, you know, just these programs that are available and give them immediate assistance in helping right those wrongs and something that is more, you know, tangible for right now. And then there's probably an engagement and community piece with people who have racial covenants in their homes, who have benefited from racial covenants but have not known that they've benefited from it, and are likely a lot of the people who do have the power to, you know, either change, whether that's through voting in the future for different bills and voicing public support and things like that. So I think there's probably two channels that we can kind of go through. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that as maybe two buckets of support that we can think through as a subcommittee as we engage with this project.
Love it. Does anybody have any more questions for our very amazing guest speakers? Speak now. I just want to thank you both once again. This was really an unbelievable presentation, very impactful, and I don't know about everyone else, but I'm feeling very inspired. And thank you, Commissioner Herkman, for making this connection. So, yeah.
Are we going to talk about other commission business?
Yeah.
Too? Okay.
And then I think we're going to just go to our agenda. And so you guys can go enjoy your night. It's beautiful outside. But yeah, we'll make it quick because I know we all want to do some things outside, especially at GFS. Anyways, thank you again, Maria and Amy.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Great to meet you all.
Will you guys come back? Would you ever?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let us know about Juneteenth if the coalition wants to be there or how that would work.
Yeah, can you send me some more information about that? I have another. I want to talk to some other coalition members and figure out who would be the best person.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then could you also share the notes you took with me if you don't mind? That way, just have them for future collaboration.
I will send an email to you with the PowerPoint and the video links and all of that stuff. I'll probably do that tomorrow.
Okay, perfect. And I'll send it to everyone else. So thank you both so much again. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah.
I am going to step away, but I'm going to leave you on just in case I don't want to
Oh,
leave and then
right.
have it be a problem. So I won't actually be here, but I'm not going to leave the meeting.
okay.
I am
Thank
gonna leave.
you. All
Goodbye.
right. Bye. All right. Great. Okay. So I know that like 3 out of the 5 of us are here at GFS. I know that we had agenda items. I want to kind of pass it to my vice chair, folk, because I know we chatted about agenda items. And so if you just want to take the floor for a second while I get the other agenda up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a second. I need to pull this up.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Oh. That's Paul.
Oh, sorry. Am I unmuted?
No, I love it. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
on
no,
that.
so adorable.
Like, I was like, I
Oh,
saw trees, so I was like, "Are you here?"
I'm like, where's the baby?
Where's the
Well,
baby? We want to
that's
see.
Moses. So
Oh,
this is Moses. Can you say hi, buddy? There we go. That's so nice. We're
hi,
and
Moses.
my wife's got our other 4, so I was trying to divide and conquer with her.
My
That's why
other
I was.
4, no big deal.
Yeah, that's right. Can you say hi, bud?
Hi.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Good boy.
Hi.
There you go.
Oh,
All right.
cute.
All right. I am here, but I'm gonna mute just because.
Totally.
Jewel.
We're multitasking. I love it. Everybody is.
So I'm seeing for the agenda, we're gonna have a discussion about Juneteenth. So is that something
Yes, let's go to that. Right.
Devonish you want to go over? And then the next one was the Crown Act, but I don't see Vice Chair Shoemate, so maybe we table that for next time.
Okay.
And also, I wanted to talk about our nominations for awards, because we have to agree on them and then, or not agree, whatever, and then bring it to the commission our next meeting in order to pass them out to the community members. And we recently received an email from the City of Minneapolis Civil Rights Department that they approve it and that it should be ongoing, that we should recognize community members. So if we forget any community members now, we can recognize them at a later date. I wanted to recognize them at Juneteenth, but obviously because we've not got them approved, we'll just have to mail them, or maybe because COVID restrictions are over, maybe we could do something at City Hall. I don't know, but we could look into that. So Juneteenth.
And sorry, just a question for the awards. And so, is this something that we would be giving them like a certificate, or like what are we awarding them specifically? Yeah.
I'm trying to be cost effective.
Okay.
I'm asking for paper certificates. I'm going to also ask that maybe we spend money on the frame, and it doesn't have to be, we can buy them all from like Amazon or something, and save cost. And then I'm going to ask that we give like a $25 gift card, because the last meeting he mentioned we have like $3,000. And obviously we can't use that money for Juneteenth because now that's going to pass. But I'm working with the Civil Rights Department to ask if they can pay, $150 for a table, because as I just explained, to be honest, may not want to hear it, the biggest cost is the porta potties. Kind of TMI, but I'm being completely transparent.
Yeah,
but,
I think the reason I asked the question is also because I think you just said that this would be an ongoing award, so maybe that's something we can discuss too, of like, do we want to make it like twice a year, or like, first I was going to say monthly, but if we're going to know the cost of the stuff, that might not be possible. So just thinking on how frequent we would want to give out these awards, and then that would go into the total amount of money that you would be asking, right?
Right. Okay. Well, one, it's a process, because each person we have to, nominate, and we got to decide yay or nay. Then we got to bring it to the commission, and then so it's a process. So I'm gonna hold to that answer and say I don't know, and just like we can take it as we can go because of that whole process. I don't know the answer to that. But Juneteenth is a work in progress. As you know, COVID restrictions were recently lifted. So we're moving we're moving as fast as we can given what's been happening, and we're doing the best we can with that. But I have some wonderful guest speakers. Mr. Philippi Cunningham, our council member, will be there. I am requesting the mayor. NAACP is on board. And I have some other great people coming as well. So I'm just excited for that. So I will share more updates as I find out as it progresses. Does anyone have any questions about that?
I have one question.
Mhm.
Would we, as a commission or subcommittee, be able to get a table there, or because it's like we're buying something?
No,
like okay.
no. Wait, let me answer that question. I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm asking that the Civil Rights Department bring a table, because everyone who comes, they need to bring their own table and chairs. If they're not coming, then I'll bring the table and the chairs. And once again, I'm just trying to fund money to support Juneteenth.
Yeah.
That's just one cost. You got, there's entertainment, you got to pay for, the stand and all those things you got to pay for. So an event like this does cost, but it's really about the significance of Juneteenth. So that too is a work in progress. But I'm working with the Civil Rights Department to try to figure out the logistics on how that would work, if that answers your question. Does that?
I'm wondering, are we gonna pay the $150 for the let's say we bring a table, but will this commission and subcommittee be able to table there, or does that go against any commission?
I mean, you guys can bring a table if you want to as a commission, but that's why I was trying to work with the department, so that we could be together.
Yeah,
we should split the tables with them, and so
the money is not going to be funded in time from the civil rights. Okay. Well, I'm trying to get again. This is why I'm working with the Civil Rights Department as a whole, and I'm trying to say, can you guys pay them $150, because as a subcommittee that has to be voted, and the next time we make is after Juneteenth.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm trying to work with them.
That's what I was saying, that they should pay for it, but we should see if we could still split the table with them.
Right, exactly. And then depending on how long the day is, Juneteenth can, we got to set up around 10 or 11, and we could go all the way to 7. So between all of us, we could take shifts. Between the department and us, we can share responsibility of manning that table.
Womaning the table.
That's right.
Peopling the table.
Theying.
Kayla reached out about having literature, civil rights. What am I trying to say?
You got it.
Yeah, literature to hand out. And I told her that we were going to be down here today, and she said I won't have it by Tuesday, but I'll have something for Juneteenth. So I don't know if the department is planning on coming, but I mean, if we, right now want to plan on attending, for people can commit to that on Saturday the 19th, then we meet again in 2 weeks. So I'm not sure what that date is, but we would be able to Commissioner Folk was saying, split. We could do shifts. At the table.
And I think that would be best, because it's a lot of responsibility for one person.
Yeah. Are we down with that as a subcommittee? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something we should definitely open, like the tabling aspect of it. Well, I guess you just said that our next commission meeting is after Juneteenth, but if we maybe Ashley and I can discuss what's the best way to float it to the broader commission without breaking any open meeting laws.
Well,
but I think we should open it up to everyone else to attend as well, and not just have it for our subcommittee.
Right, and I also reached out to the chair and to the vice chair in terms of them speaking.
Yeah.
Because
and presenting the sorry to move it.
No. And it's okay. Also to talk about the Civil Rights Department, but also to address the gun violence that's been happening.
Yeah.
I recently emailed the chair and the vice chair. I came up with a proclamation. I'm requesting that the S&P team review it and I'm requesting a gun violence day and a gun violence accountability task force. Those are my asks. And I talked to Mr. Cunningham. He said he likes the idea and he supports the idea, and he'll talk about the gun violence as well. But yes, we can bring up tabling ideas to the commission, because I think we do this opportunity to show up. Like I said, the NAACP will be there, requested the mayor. So I think it is in our best interest to show up and support in whatever ways we can. Juneteenth is only one day. So any thoughts?
I think that, I feel like we all agree that we will be there.
Is that something we need to, okay, so
Do we need to vote on it?
Oh, you're saying that we should talk about it at the next commission meeting, but then it'll be over.
Oh, no, I'm saying like our subcommittee should be there, or just like people can sign up. And I think Vice Chair Commissioner Polk and I can chat about like maybe shifts, 12 to 2 or whatever, and then we can email the subcommittee, and then we can also email we can send out an email to all the commissioners
asking for some support,
to see if they want to stop by. Here are the time slots, here are how many people we need. Does that sound doable?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that
Okay.
we can connect. I think, well, we can text each other, but we'll have time to connect the two of us, and then we can just map out like what's the best way to disseminate this information out to the subcommittee and the broader commission, and encourage attendance across the commission, because I want to make sure, we talked about one of our goals is just getting more face time as a commission as a whole. So I think as many people we can encourage out of the commission to attend, the better. So that's my perspective on it.
Also, I want to provide an update. City of Minneapolis Public Health will be in attendance. They provided me with like 4,000 face masks, boxes of hand sanitizer, handy wipes, tissues. I shared that information with the chair and the vice chair as well.
So go ahead.
No.
I think that for our tabling purposes, and once Vice Chair Folk and I figure out shifts and stuff, I think we should have the departments flyers and information. We should also see, I don't know if you guys are interested in having the Just Deeds information, also having ending qualified immunity, and then we could maybe do voter engagement, or is that just too much?
No, and this is why I say that the work in Juneteenth is ongoing, because COVID restrictions just ended, and so we're trying to figure out what space we can have because it just ended. So it's a work in progress. Right now, we just have a school involved, and we're trying to get more space within that community. So that's why it's a work in progress.
And I know this is just one idea I just had, and this might help with your need to have more people have tables to fund the the porta potties. But one idea is if you just brought up the public health department, and so I don't know if they would ever want to have a table there and they could hand out information regarding vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines,
That's a great
testing.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Okay.
We talked about that. We talked about that, and I asked them if they could do vaccines there, and he said he'll look into that.
Oh, that would be.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, and then one other option, and I don't know if we would want to open up to that many people, but just thinking about voter education, people are already campaigning. There's already organizers and campaigns up and running and doing stuff regarding voting, specifically for the candidates, but also just broadly on education. So I wonder if there's some people that we could reach out for that they might also want to have booths at Juneteenth. And I don't know how political you want to make it, so maybe that's something maybe there's a non-partisan group that we can connect that is just more for voter education, because then that could be another opportunity to have those materials there and for you to have another booth there.
Yeah, we're open to all ideas, but once again, I will let you guys know about the space that is available due to the COVID restrictions just lifting.
Got it. Yep. Okay. Sounds good.
Also, you were saying something about Black Votes Matter getting a table, and they are non-partisan, non-partisan voting engagement and registration group. Yeah. Oh,
that's great.
Commissioner
You already have it
Herkman,
covered.
you have your hand up. Well, it's also because I work for Anika through that organization, the Black Votes Matter. So I'm like, yeah, let's get our team. So, Mr. Herkman, is that an accident? Muted, unmuted. All right. Well, Commissioner Herkman, you have your hand up, and I want to honor your hand. I can't hear you. But your hand is down. Okay. Do you want to go over this list?
Yeah, so I have a list of community members I sent to Miss Commissioner Gold. The first one is Rakia Abdi. She works in the Somali community in the Cedar Riverside community. I did provide a link in terms of her work that she does in the community. She's also works at Hennepin County as a librarian. She came up with, she published her own book about parenting and dysphoria, I believe. Next, we have Eliza Wesley, who is a gatekeeper at George Floyd Square. She's been recognized for her ongoing community work, volunteering, unpaid. And next I have Dr. Raj. He's a professor at Metro State University. He also serves on the NAACP. He does prison reform and restorative justice in the community. Next we have Raheem Shabazz L, who does Circles of Discipline, who is also working on Juneteenth and various ongoing community work. He's always involved, volunteering his time. Next is Kellis Houston, who came to the commission meeting regarding the African American Preservation Act. Mary Jo Copeland, she is Sharing Caring Hands. Her name, I hope you guys know who she is and the work that she does in the community for people in need. Shakira Frazier, Circles of Discipline, great community member, always giving to those in need. Community, Michael, what is Michael's last name?
Well, I'm blanking on it.
We'll find it.
We'll find it.
We'll get back to you on Michael, but Michael's here at George Floyd. He gives free food to the community. So if you don't have any money, it's okay. He just asks for donations. Delshire Perry, she does work in Be Their Voices nonprofit. Her son died in prison. 9 days in prison, and she turned her pain into Restorative Prison Reform Act. She got Ramsey County correction officers to wear cameras in the facilities, and she's doing ongoing work to educate and make time for our incarcerated low-level individuals. And that's it for me. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, let's open up the floor if anybody has any suggestions.
Please let me know where you need some assistance. Sankar, who does the Circle of Discipline, is my cousin actually on my family.
What?
Yeah, like my father-in-law was W. Harry Davis, if you know who he is. So I know a lot of people like in the community and stuff like that. So, and Sankar is a family member. So all I got to call is a couple people if we want them to do any more or any less or any whatever. But I'm more than happy to help to get things moving, especially with Juneteenth. So I think it's a really important event. So, but with anything, ideally, but just let me know where I can help, where you need calls, anything.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we need to officially vote on these list of 9 individuals. So Ms. Commissioner Davis mentioned she approves of Shankara Frazier and knows her very well and knows of her work. Raheem works with her in the circles of discipline. I worked with a lot of them at Hennepin County. Miss Vice Chair Folk, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm, are we bringing all 9 to the broader commission to vote on as these are our awardees, or are we trying to narrow it down? Just to clarify. Sorry.
What would you like to do? What would you like to do, Vice Chair Folk?
My opinion is because I guess we should present to the commission as a broader whole of like these are the people that we're looking to award. Here's the, we're going to give them a certificate and a $25 gift card, because I think for the commission to approve everything, I think it would be helpful for them to understand like what is the full thing that we're doing and exactly what is the cost associated with that, knowing that it would come out of our budget. And so my recommendation is maybe if we're trying to do this ongoing, maybe we start with a couple and then we continue giving out different awards. I also just don't know, because it sounds like it's kind of up in the air of when like how much budget we have or how that all process all works. But I think just knowing how the commission works, it might be more easier to bring a few people in first versus having 9 people. And that's
well, let me just say a piece of paper doesn't cost much, and the vote of a gift card would be separate. So you're talking about 2 different things.
Okay.
And
yeah.
Question. Ms. Commissioner Davis, you are a realtor, you're good with numbers. What is 9 times 25? Just out of curiosity. Is it 100 and...
Because we have
Hold on,
a
I'm about
budget
to
of
look real quick.
3,000
But
in 6 months.
9 times 25 is $225.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So here's kind of what I'm thinking, because I like because in my mind I was like, oh yeah, let's just do all 9. But I kind of like Vice Chair Folk's idea of doing some, you know what I mean, kind of trickling it out. But I think we should approve all 9, and then we can, do 5 now, 4 later, and then keep adding. Do you know what I mean? Because this process every time is just going to be like, hey, and I feel like I entrust in all of us to make decisions for the body, for the subcommittee, and for the larger body of who, in our community is doing the most work, or who we want to, give a little shine to, a little certificate and, $25. So I feel like, I know we have to like vote on this and we have to agree on it and but where I'm at is like, I fully like, if anybody on this call were like, hey, I think this person, I don't need to hear a reason why personally, but I think it's good that we know what they do and why you're connected to them. But I entrust everybody, so that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I just don't know if that's the perspective that everyone takes on the commission.
Yeah,
and so that's,
I don't think
so
it
my
is.
questions are coming from that perspective. It's not necessarily like my personal opinion per se, but I'm just trying to think of what would be most effective sitting in some of these meetings and hearing some of the questions that do come up. So that's where, if we can even Commissioner Devonish, I don't know if it's like putting it on a document or sending it before the agenda for the next
You know
meeting.
what?
I don't know how we're putting it.
You know what?
That would be helpful.
Oh Lord Jesus. All right. Number 1, I got an email from the Civil Rights Department saying that they like the idea. If you want, I'll email that to you so you can look it over. And remind me, during our last meeting, what did we agree to about this process?
I think we agreed to the subcommittee coming back with a list of nominees and having more information on like how the award, like how are we awarding them and what the awards would be for.
Okay, well, I emailed the chair and the vice chair, and I put that on the agenda. So I guess we'll just table this discussion for another time.
Why? No.
No,
I think that I am ready to make a motion. Do we have a quorum? 1,
No.
2, 3, 4?
I mean, should we break down the list, or what do you guys want to do? I sent you.
I'm proposing a motion to approve the 9 list that we have in front of us, and then bring that list of nominees to the larger body. And if they have any questions, I mean, we can maybe provide information about. Or what?
But this is what I suggest. I'll send you guys. I don't even know if it's worth it because I sent the list.
Yeah.
I sent the list to you. So I don't know. I guess I had a different vision and different. I thought this information would be shared. But needless to say, what I can do is I'll send the list. I can't send it to each one of you because I'd be breaking quorum rules. So I guess I have to send this list to, I don't know how to do this now. Anyways, what I did is I sent it to the chair and the vice chair and added it to our agenda. So whatever you guys want to do, it's fine with me.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna stick to what I said. I think that we should vote on the nominees the names that were just read off to bring to the larger commission add to the agenda item that's on for the June 21st. No, you're not happy with that.
No, it doesn't matter.
No, what was your vision?
No. I don't know.
Come
No, I don't know. And I know we were recording, so I just, maybe we should table this until July, and just, I don't know. I put this on the list for the agenda. So if you guys, Miss Vice Chair Folk, I don't know how you want to proceed, but I'm gonna respect the hierarchy, and I'm just gonna take a step back, and I'm gonna leave it up to you and the chair to make your decision on how we should proceed.
So I personally feel like we're on the same page. So I don't want there to be, I just want to clarify that. I'm not disagreeing by any sense. I'm saying I think we should bring these 9 to the commission. Like, absolutely. I totally am agreeing with that. My perspective is just, we should give information to the commission ahead of time so we can make it faster, so they can they send out these agendas 48 hours in advance. So if these names are already in here with a bullet point of this is what they've done in the community and etc., I think that will make it easier for when we actually have the discussion as a commission, and it would move that conversation faster so we can actually get it approved faster. That is all where I'm coming from. I've no disagreements on these people whatsoever, or bringing it, or we can approve them all at one time. I'm aligned, like I'm in agreement with all of that. I was just suggesting ways that we can maybe ensure that the commission moves it forward and we can have a shorter maybe discussion about it in the actual commission meeting. That was where I was coming from.
All right, so can we vote?
What are we voting on?
We're voting on these 9 nominees to bring to. I know it's on the agenda, but isn't that what we said in the last agenda? No.
I don't know.
Okay. So why don't we just vote right now to bring this to the full body meeting? Right? Is that okay? So I'm proposing that we take a vote to bring these 9 nominees that's already added to the agenda item, but we're going to vote on giving them a certificate and $25 each. for their service, their volunteer service in our community.
Well, can we,
Mhm.
I don't know if the $25 would be separate or together with that
Okay.
vote. I don't know.
Well, why don't we vote on both? Are you guys cool with that? Or we can vote on both for the larger commission? What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay. So do I have a second?
Yes, I got
I'll
a second.
second that.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Vice Chair Folk.
Yes.
Commissioner Davis.
I second that. Yes.
And Commissioner Devonish.
Yes.
And Chair Gold. Yes. That motion passes, and we will bring the 9 nominees to the Fuller Commission on Monday, June 21st. And now I'm going to motion that we vote on giving these 9 nominees $25 gift cards when we talk to the commission, the full body, just saying that that's what we voted on, and hopefully they will do the same. Do I have a second?
Yes.
All right. Let's see. Commissioner Davis.
Yes.
Vice Chair Folk.
Yes.
Commissioner Devonish.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold. Yes. The motion passes, and we will bring the 9 plus the motion to allocate $25 each to the full body commission meeting on Monday, June 21st. All right. I think that it's already 8 o'clock. And Vice Chair Folk, do you have the agenda in front of you still?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So we're not going to do the Crown Act because Janelle is not here.
Right.
The next thing on here was this be something, say something, do something, stop discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to discuss that? I can list the other items as well. It's end qualified immunity, anniversary, remembrance of George Floyd, 525 at George Floyd Square, which is today.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. This was also the agenda for like our previous meeting that got canceled. So I was gonna invite everybody here and talk about that.
okay,
Do we want to talk about the campaign?
What?
Say if you see something, do
Mhm.
something, say so, or stop
Right.
discrimination.
The local artist who's designing a logo is still working on that and needs some more time. I'm hoping that by maybe the commission meeting, I can provide it to the whole commission so that everyone can see it. And I did put it on the request to add it on the agenda for next meeting.
All right. The other thing that I don't know how you both feel about this, but meeting in person for our next subcommittee meeting.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Vice Chair Folk.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
All right. Should we plan on? Should we vote? Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, one question. Remind me, and I really should know this, but who are the other members of this subcommittee? Are there anyone that's missing? I know Commissioner Hertman dropped off, but
I'd have to look on my email, to
okay.
be honest. Sorry.
No. I just want to make sure if we're voting on something like that,
Yeah.
at least a majority of people here. I think we do.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't
true.
know. So
yeah.
let me look. I can look on here.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it looks like we're just missing Commissioner Hertman because Kate Stevens is no longer with the commission.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
I'm sure he'd be cool. I mean, I don't want to speak for him, but all right. So making a motion to meet at George Floyd Square or Phelps Park. We can figure out the details on our next commission meeting, our subcommittee, meeting. Can I get a second?
Yes, I will second that. But one thing that we might just want to note is if we have to somehow record it, or just how to, because isn't this meeting
I
technically supposed to
think,
be public?
yeah. So because we, if we let the public know in advance, you know, that we're meeting here and this is the date and time and you can engage, you know, in the public discussion at that certain time, then yes. If we don't let them know, then we're like violating open meeting laws. But yeah, if we move to a meeting in person outside, then they can meet us there. Otherwise, they'll just have the notes or meeting minutes, you know?
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Devonish,
Hmm?
meeting in person.
Yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Folk
Yes.
and Commissioner Davis.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold is a yes. That motion passes. So yay, our next subcommittee will be in person, either at Phelps Park or at George Floyd Square, and the public will be notified and they can attend the meeting, and we'll have a separate little time set aside for public discussion.
That's on
Anything-
June 8th, correct? So it's
June 8th.
okay. Just so I
Okay.
can be accurate. Okay.
No, that's
Chair
great.
Gold, just so I know, do you take point in putting this stuff on the calendar now, or who has to do that now?
I don't
Connect with
know.
Kayla to figure that out. Okay,
We'll figure it out. I'll look in my emails and my spam folder because I'm sure I missed something. So
let's maybe connect with Kayla on just how to make sure we're adding that, and if it's in person, and how we can include that detail on the calendar. I just want to make sure we're doing it properly.
Totally. Okay. And the unqualified immunity stuff is ongoing. And we got the update about the Stop Discrimination campaign. We did have an update about Juneteenth. Is there anything else you two would like to three? I feel like we're one because we're together. You three would like to discuss before we adjourn the meeting?
How would I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, how would you like the Civil Rights Commission to help with the qualified immunity?
It would be more of like a tabling or community engagement for folks who want more face time with the community.
Mm-hmm.
It would just be like volunteer shifts. Like I know we're going to be at Bancroft on Thursday from 6 to 8 at their annual Bancroft meeting or whatever. So just stuff like that. More just
representation.
And engaging. And then also, you know, tying in that you work on the commission, you're an advisory board, like that kind of stuff.
I don't think there's anything we really need to discuss, but I just want to list off the other stuff that was on the agenda in case, Chair Gold, you feel like we should talk about these items.
Yeah.
So the other items were volunteering dates. So I think we had voter registration, food pantry, community need communities. So something, do we want to bring back to the commission as opportunities come? And then once a month mutual aid drive. I don't know if we want to talk about that, or we can also table it for next time.
I think we can table a mutual aid drive for next time, but I do think that I want to find a way that's convenient for all commissioners to be able to be more engaged in community and community involvement. So like food pantry stuff and volunteering for like Michael's organization, Community Needs Community, and then also tabling, doing voter engagement and qualified immunity. Like I just wish there was a Google Drive or, you know, Google form we could share, but I know that violates open meeting law. So maybe I'll just send out emails, you know, just like one-way emails for folks. Here's the, you know, monthly engagement stuff. I don't know. So I'm just kind of like, it was more of like a brainstorming thing that we can continue to talk about, you know, making more efficient ways for us to be out and about in the community.
Yeah, and I feel like we can ask Kayla too if there's just maybe some ways we can go around doing that.
Yeah.
If it's it doesn't feel like it's like official business per se, but it could also be. But I'm just, yeah, because I agree with you. I think it's tricky with the open meeting laws, but
Yeah.
it would be helpful if we could just directly communicate with
Yeah.
people.
All right. Well, with no further discussion, I call this meeting adjourned. And I just want to thank everybody for being on the call and doing all the hard work and all that. So thank you three that are on the call. Let's go enjoy the night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Al.